have to look up here. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. This is Karen Bonifilio, Outer Realms, Any Inner Journeys. And I'm very excited for our guest today. And our guest is Chelsea Anderson. Would you like to say hi, Chelsea, before I introduce you?
Hi there. Yes.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. Okay, Chelsea, and I have to read this, is an evidential psychic medium that has over 16 years of experiencing and transforming lives, and her sessions are truly a healing and unforgettable experience. She embodies a compassionate and down to earth personality that brings comfort and healing to every reading. Chelsea uses her unique gifts to connect with her clients, loved ones, and offers clarity and guidance to those grieving from loss. That's me right there. The information she validates is specific, non leading, and uplifting in nature. So, welcome, Chelsea. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, can you tell me, since you deal with people on the other side, when was the first time that you saw a person on the other side of the veil?
My my first experience that I can recall, I'm sure that there was experiences I had prior to this, but I just don't have it linked into my long-term memory was
Uh huh.
I was actually in third grade. And I remember I was sitting in a class in school. And I remember looking over towards where like the coat rack room was, where we would leave our, little boxed lunches and our coats in the morning. And there was
Hmm.
a woman that was standing there, and I could see her, but she was see through. And then as it got like towards her waist and towards her legs, she just kind of faded. So I could really only see her from the waist up. And I remember looking, and I could see her, and she was looking right at me, not like at the class, but like had eyes locked on me. And I
Hmm.
remember looking around like at my peers, and I was like, no one else sees this. Like, this is just me. Okay. And when you're young and impressionable like that, like you don't want to say anything weird or do anything to like stand out or be different. And so I didn't like call any attention to it. But I remember looking at her and just kind of seeing her, and then she just kind of faded and just kind of disappeared. Like there was no connection. We didn't communicate or anything. And that's my first memory of like starting to see people. And then she came to me later and did communicate with me. But as far as memories of being able to visually see somebody on the other side, as opposed to clairvoyantly be able to see someone like in my head, that was my first experience with that. So third grade. So
That's
most of my
early.
life.
That's early. And you weren't fearful from this visitation.
Mm-mm. No,
Oh,
no, it didn't feel threatening at all. It was more of like she was checking me out and I was checking her out, and that was kind of it. And no, it wasn't intimidating to me at all. But I feel like my whole life I've been kind of prepped to do this work, so death has never been intimidating to me.
they were getting you used to it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just out of curiosity, was it a family member that you had seen?
No, no,
No.
no, I have no connection to this person. I remember when I saw her,
Mm.
I just remember she had, I would say, kind of ash blonde hair. And then it looked light and like gray, but that one side of her face looked melted or like burned. And then when
Oh.
I later saw her, it was probably a couple months later, I had seen her and she was in the same spot. And I remember we were doing like a class activity, and she was standing there, and she looked at me and she said, "Help me." And I was like, I looked around again at my friends, like, does no one else see this woman asking for help in the corner of the room? And so I remember in my head, because I didn't hear her through here. I heard her in my mind. And so I was like, well, I wonder if she can hear me. So when she asked for help, I responded to her, "How do I help you?" And she was like, I died in a fire. And I was like, okay. And then after that, I was like, well, how else can I help you? And then she just faded. And there was no other communication. That was it. And I remember later in the afternoon, I went up to my teacher and I was like, did anybody die in a fire nearby? And she goes, that's funny you say that. And she had me look across. She goes, look outside, Chelsea. And I said, okay. And across the street, so my elementary school was in a residential neighborhood. And so right across the street were all these little homes. And across the street, you could see these three different homes, and the one in the middle looked significantly newer than the others. And she
Oh,
goes, that house right there in the late 80s burned down. And I was like, oh. And I did,
wow.
and she goes, why do you ask? And I was like, oh, nothing. I wasn't going to say this half melted woman keeps appearing in your classroom, but it was fascinating to me that she would randomly pop up to me, and that was the last time I saw her. Was that time. I only had two incidents with her, but it was interesting. But going back to your original question, yeah, that was the first time that I ever saw, or that I can recall connecting with spirit.
Oh my gosh. I'm kind of fixated on this. I'm sorry. Did you
It's
ever
okay.
see her after that?
No, it was just those two times, and that was it.
I hope she got released.
I hope she did. I mean, because I was what, 10, 9 in at that time, so I didn't know what to
No.
do, or how to help her. I know she wanted help, and I do hope that she was able to cross over or find the piece that she needed. But yeah, at the time I was so young, I didn't know what to do. I was just kind of like, okay, this is cool. Apparently I can see some funky people. So, yeah, it was interesting.
And it's great that it didn't terrify you either. I mean,
No,
that's
it's I've always been obsessed with the macabre, even as a kid. Like, I mean, no, truly, like my favorite movies were Beetlejuice and Friday the 13th, and I'm
oh
not totally morbid or morbid personality, but I've always
my,
just been drawn to it. It doesn't intimidate me, it doesn't bother me, and I think my mom thought I was real weird as a kid growing up.
yeah.
But no, I love my dad used to take me through walks as a kid through the graveyard that was near our house. And I know death has never been anything that's ever intimidated me in my life.
I gotta tell you, I've walked through graveyards. I enjoy that and reading
Yeah.
about the people and the families. I like that.
Hmm. It's
Yeah. Oh,
peaceful. That
and
for me,
peaceful.
it's peaceful. Other people, it might be intimidating, but for me, it's always been peaceful.
It creates a story. If you
Yeah.
look at things, it creates a story. I liked it. Yeah, I used
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
I'll let go of this now. I just woke up
You're
late.
fine.
So obviously, you started early in your life. Is there a defining moment that first drew you to spirituality or exploring your psychic abilities?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question because
Oh,
I don't feel like there was like one incident. Like if I can, in fact, I was just having this conversation with a group reading that I did the other day because they asked a very similar question to you, and I feel like my whole life I've been kind of being primed to do this work because growing up
mhm.
when I was super young, my middle brother and I, we were only 3 years apart. And so I remember my dad, when my brother would get real fussy, my dad would be like, Chelsea, let's go on a walk. And we lived walking distance, maybe 100 yards from a graveyard. And so he would say, grab
Oh,
your crayons and grab some paper. And we'd go to the graveyard and I would color on graves with the paper so I could see the names of the people.
hmm.
You're from Salem, so the Jason Lee Cemetery?
I
That's right
doesn't
off
ring a
of
bell.
it's right it's one of the original cemeteries that was ever, it was like one of the first ones ever built in Salem.
What
And
area?
so
West,
it's off
west.
it's in Northeast Salem off of D Street.
Okay.
And so that was my stomping grounds growing up as a kid. And so my dad would take me on walks there. And so I remember doing that as a kid. And then, when I was, God, my earliest memories of realizing that I was different, not just from seeing this, half burned woman in my classroom, as I had other incidents where I would feel compelled, like to tell people information, or I would know things about people. And um, so it was a cluster of things, but my first memory of like actually communicating with spirit that then kind of led me to the curiosity or fascination of what's wrong with me or why am I so different was um, I remember I was sitting in my sixth grade classroom,
Hmm.
and
Oh
I
no.
remember seeing this older woman. She came to me in
Uh-huh.
class, and I was supposed to have a play date with my friend Sarah after school.
Hmm.
And she came to me and she was like, "You're not going to be able to play with Sarah today." And in my head, I was like, "Oh, why not?" And she was like, "Because I'm her grandmother and I passed away today." And I was like, oh, okay. And then after that, she just kind of faded away. And so I didn't think anything of it. And then Sarah's mom was supposed to come pick Sarah and I up from school that day. And so when I was standing out in front of the school, I saw my mom's van pull up. And when I got into the van with my mom, I said, I know, Mom, Sarah's grandma died. And she was like, how do you know that, honey? And I was like, because she came to me in class. And my mom was kind of like, oh, okay. And so when I told her that, that wasn't the first odd thing that I told her. I was able to recall memories of, um, which I thought was a memory, which in reality, I didn't realize that was channeling because I was seeing imagery from someone else's life or someone else's memory.
Oh, yes.
And so I was like, yeah, Mom, there's the family member named Inez. Well, that was my great aunt. I never met her. She passed away years before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom had kind of collected some of these stories over the years that I told her. And so by the time I was in sixth grade, my mom bought me my first like psychic book and was like,
For her.
here you go, because Google didn't exist back then.
Oh,
So
I
she was,
know.
I just remember her giving it to me and saying like, here, you're different. You're weird. Take this, go do something with it. And the book was, it was a really great book because it wasn't just about psychics or mediums. It talked about crystals and astral projection and all sorts of paranormal information or the metaphysical related topics. And so it kind of was my introduction to that. And that
Yeah.
was really what created the fascination with that. And so I can kind of give credit to my mom for kick starting it, even though I think there were other things that were already kind of priming me for it. But that's probably my earliest start that I can recall as far as being fascinated with it was in sixth
Mm-hmm.
grade. So yeah,
Sixth
pretty
grade.
young. I was probably about 10, 11.
Yeah, and kudos to your mom for getting you a book. I mean, that's great. Instead of trying to shut
And
you down.
I feel blessed because I wasn't raised in a religious family. So I didn't come into spirituality with any kind of predispositions or any kind of views about spirituality. I really truly was blessed that I had the opportunity to be a blank slate and just kind of read about things. And,
Yeah.
if it's something didn't align with me or if I felt like, yeah, that makes sense, then I could kind of go from there. But yeah, so I would say probably sixth grade was when I really started to find a curiosity in the metaphysical and the paranormal.
That's cool. And your mom didn't develop her gift, but she helped you with your gift.
Yes, my mom has a gift, but hers is for predicting tragedies and pregnancies, and that's it. That's where her gift ends, right? So
Life
if you're
and
gonna
death.
die or give birth, she's the person you want to go to.
Oh my
And it's
God.
odd because I remember one time my brother and we went snowboarding, and
Sorry.
I was probably in my mid 20s, and
Mhm.
we were coming down the mountain. We were on our way home, and we had ended up. My brother was driving, and he ended up rear-ending, and we kind of bounced off a couple cars because there was ice everywhere.
Ooh.
And so the car was drivable, but it was mashed up on
Yeah.
pretty much on all sides. I jokingly say he was trying to kill me, but he refutes that. But I digress. Um, but no, we were driving. We probably got about 10 miles down the road, so we were probably like in the Gresham area by the time she called and she goes, "How bad's the damage?" And I was like, "What?"
Oh.
And I go, "What damage?" And she goes, "I know you guys got into an accident." And I was like, how do you know? Did they? Because it was on a Sunday, and I'm like, the insurance company, like this was back in the day when you had to call in a claim, right? Like you didn't just hop on an app real quick and submit it. And so I knew no one had called it in yet, and I was like, how? No one called. And she goes, I just know. Are you guys okay? And I was like, yeah, we're fine, but the car's not great. And she was like, that's fine. Just drive safe. I'll see you at home. So it was weird stuff like that. Like growing up, that was normal to me. And then I
Mhm.
grew up realizing that, oh no, wait, no one else's moms do this. It's just my weird mom. So she has a gift as well, but mine's different and a little more broad than hers
Well,
is.
tell us about your gift.
So when it comes to my gift, I'm a psychic medium, so I can see what's kind of coming down the pike for people. I can also communicate with people who are on the other side. Not all mediums are psychics, and I do believe that people who are psychics aren't always mediums. Some people feel that it goes both ways. I think that some people have a plethora of gifts where it's more of
Yes.
like a spectrum. That's kind of how I describe it to people. And so for me, I think if we're going to give it like a terminology, psychic medium works best, because I do have clients that come to me just for psychic work, and I have people who come to me just to connect with loved ones on the other side.
Mhm.
I'm what's considered, as you said in your introduction, I'm what's considered an evidential medium. So there are mediums who are more like empathy based, where they'll talk more in the session about, this person on their side, they feel like this, and they connect to you like this, and they'll talk more of like emotion based. For me, I am much more focused on, I believe my goal and my purpose as a medium is to more or less provide or demonstrate through validation or through evidence that there's life after life. That's really all my job is. Now, what your loved ones come through and say, I have no control over that. That's totally up to them. But for me, I feel that my gift is I'm here to help, I'm here to heal, and
Mhm.
to promote a higher level of consciousness to those who are willing to accept it, because not everyone's willing to accept it, right? And again,
Mhm.
that's not my job to force it. But
Right.
for me, healing is my goal. And, I tell people, I realize I'm not the medium for everyone. There are some people where my energy, and I'm very boisterous, and I'm a lot, and I know that, and I can own it. But I
Totally.
realize that, there are some people where they want someone that's more subdued, more demure. And
Right.
but for me, I try to focus most on healing and presenting evidence through mediumship as to letting people know that, look, your loved ones are on the other side, loving, guiding, and protecting you, and trying to help you on your path. Like, to me, if I had to sum up mediumship in an elevator pitch and a 10-second little summary,
Yeah.
that's essentially it. That's what I do.
Hmm. And what is your main way, or tell us the different ways that you receive the information?
So I would say, out of all of the clairs, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with all of them, but I have a feeling you know what the clairs are.
Let's
Clair
say our audience
aliens.
doesn't know. Let's say they don't know what it is.
Fair enough. So clairaudience, being able to hear, I can hear spirit. Clairsentience, being able to feel them, feel their emotions. Like, there's times where I do get really excited in a session, or I will cry in a session. And it's not because I'm feeling connected to the client, it's because I'm feeling connected to spirit and they're feeling happy, or
Yes.
they're feeling emotional or sad. Clairvoyance, so being able to see, right? So having that vision, like, for instance, last night I had a client, and normally when spirit comes to me, they'll usually step forward with, I'll feel their gender and their energy, and then they'll go right into, how did they pass? How did they cross over? This person was like, nope, here's what I looked like. And so, oddly enough, they were wearing a red buffalo check shirt, like what you're wearing. But I was able to describe what this individual was wearing, like what was wearing, what he looked like. And so that was kind of an interesting session, because spirit doesn't usually step forward with that, with how they look, until later in the session. But so clairvoyance, being able to see that. Clair aliens, being able to smell. I will get that in sessions, but not very often. I tend to find that clairgustance, which is being able to taste, and clair aliens, smell, those are the two that I get the least. And that's just me personally.
Yes.
I've often thought that, if we look at all the different clairs that are out there, those two seem like they would have the least amount of information to offer someone. Like, I'm tasting a Mexican food, right? Like, where can you go with that? There's just
Yeah.
not a ton to go with it. Now, if the person that I'm channeling is a smoker, I'll smell cigarettes. If the person had a penchant to wear like a really strong Chanel perfume, I'll
Mhm.
smell an overbearing perfume. If they were a baker, I'll smell bread. So sometimes the information, when it comes through like that, is helpful. But I tend to find that in general, when it comes to validating information, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience, so being able to see, hear, and feel, are the three strongest that come through for
Mhm.
me.
Totally understand that. Um, do you prepare yourself in a certain way before a reading?
Uh, that's a good question. So I like to meditate before a session, but I typically don't need more than 5 or 10 minutes. I'm kind of an oddball like that. I know a dear friend of mine. He's my best friend. He's an amazing medium in Portland. His name's Joshua John De Lorenzo, and
Oh my gosh.
he
He,
has to.
mhm.
Oh, have you heard of him?
Oh, he's done many readings for me.
Oh, he's amazing. I love
Many
him.
readings. Yeah.
I feel very blessed that I not just get to work with him, but I get to call him my best friend. But he gets mad at me sometimes because he's like, I hate that you can just take 30 seconds and then you're just ready to go. And I'm like, I don't know. This is just, for me, mediumship, I don't want to say that I fell into it, but I fell into it a little bit. And so I didn't have a predisposition to ever like doing any major studying or any reading of books or anything where, there's a requirement where you need to meditate or you need to do things to prep for a session. And he came from
Mhm.
a different perspective where he does like to ground and take 20, 30 minutes before a session. And I'm kind of like, give me 5 minutes and I'll be ready to go,
I can see why
kind of
you'd
tuck
be
my hair
jealous.
back and I'm ready. Right.
Yeah.
But as far as how I prep for a session, I'll usually just take 5 minutes to ground. And I kind of have a mantra that I say to spirit. And I basically just, ask spirit to step forward and bring any information that they can that will bring peace, love, healing, or guidance, or all of the above to my client. And to do that through validating messages for bringing through any information that they need to hear or anything that will bring them healing. And then from there, I just kind of visually like I'll see myself raising my vibration. How I do it is I'll see
Mhm.
myself walking up through a staircase. And as I get
Oh,
to the top of the staircase, there's kind of like a double door and
mhm.
it's really bright and it's really full of light. And then as I walk through the double door, I'll hear it kind of go clink and I'll hear it shut behind me. And then that's literally how I know I'm ready to go. It's
That's
it's
pretty
weird.
cool.
I didn't learn that from anyone. That was just kind of through me organically just kind of learning this on my own. That was kind of my own little thing. And that's
And
just
that
what I've
is kind
always
of a
done.
meditation too.
Yeah.
I have done that with another psychic medium.
Oh, okay.
She calls it the stairway to heaven.
And sure. I mean, I don't name anything because I'm not a guru. I'm not a scientist. I can't prove what I do. I'm like, I just do this thing and it just happens. And that's all I know. But yeah, I mean, sure. Maybe that's what it is. And that's what I'm doing
Well,
is,
no, it's
climbing
just,
the
yeah,
stairway.
you have your own thing. That's
Yeah.
okay. Do you ever do group readings with Joshua? Do you come to the
Yeah.
Portland area?
Yep. Yep.
You
We
do.
just did an event in September. Yeah. Up at Psychic Sister.
I saw that.
But
God
did you
was sure it was
come?
going. I go in the audiences. Nobody ever talks to me. They don't. Nobody ever comes in. But
You
maybe they
know, and here's the thing is that, and here's what I tell people, because that's actually a really common comment or feedback that we'll get is people will be like, this isn't my first time I've been to a gallery event, or this isn't the first time that I've, been, and I show up and no one ever comes through for me. And, I jokingly want to tell like people that don't get a reading, like you and 35 other people or 90 other people, depending, because him and I have done events as small as like 10 people, like a small personal home group reading, or
Mhm.
as much as like over 100 people, right? And I always tell people that it's not a matter of, you needing more help than others or other people needing more help than you. Sometimes it really comes down to what you need in healing. Maybe that setting is not proper or appropriate
Mhm.
for you. I've had times where I'm doing a group event and a spirit will come through and say, it's interesting. Spirit will almost, in some circumstances, give me some background information, like, here's what you need to know, but do not talk about this in front of people. And so I kind of have to sit there and go, okay, and kind of listen to what they have to say. And then I'll tell the client, like, or the person, the sitter that I'm reading, I'll say, look, there was some circumstances that went down that your loved one is very ashamed and embarrassed that they didn't protect you from, and I'm going to talk to you about that later. And I'll go up to them after the session and bring that up because it's not meant to be broadcasted in a public place.
Mhm.
Other times, spirit knows what you need for healing. And sometimes in a group, and when I say group, I mean like,
Yeah.
10 plus people, what
Mhm.
needs to happen in a group atmosphere or what comes through in a group atmosphere maybe is not appropriate for the level of healing that you need in that moment. And spirit knows that. So they're not going to waste their energy or expend that time
Mhm.
if they know that you need more than that. So that's kind of one of the things I like to tell people. And it's not an excuse. I mean, to me, it's true. Like, if you just need like a quick hello from your loved one, like, hey, I made it to the big house, we're good, then maybe that's all that you need, right? Um, because I know that I've done group readings and my dad came through and was like, hey, made it good. And to where I knew without a doubt with the evidence that came through, it was him.
Uh-huh.
But that was all I needed, like to feel at peace was just a quick little 1 minute, like, hey, made it, we're good. And that was all, so that's kind of what I remind people. It's not a matter of who needs it the most, it's more of, is this forum appropriate for the level of healing that you need, if that makes sense.
No, I think it's really a lot of clarification there. I think that's great. I think that's
Mhm.
wonderful. And when you come back up and do a group reading, you let me know ahead of time,
I
okay?
will. Okay.
Yeah, I will
Promise.
definitely attend. And I've been to Psychic Sisters, and I think that place is amazing.
Yeah, I know that we are I know we're probably going to do an event early in the year, January or February,
Okay.
probably.
Oh, nice. First of the year. It's a
Yeah.
nice way to kick it off. Okay,
Yep.
good. When you say spirit, are you define spirit to you? And I don't know if that you're talking about your guides or your higher self. What are you talking about when you say spirit?
So for me, when I say spirit, I will clarify the difference between spirit guides because to me, I feel that there are levels. There's a variety or again, a spectrum there. So for me, spirit guides and angels, they vibrate at a much higher vibration to me personally than someone who has been here on the physical plane. So when
Yes.
I'm referring and I say spirit, I'm specifically referring to someone who has been here on the physical plane and is now on the other side on the spiritual plane.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I'm talking to an angel or a spirit guide, I will say, like, for instance, in a session, I'll say, your spirit guide is saying this, or
Yes.
your guardian angels or what have you, or saying this. But when I'm referring to spirit. Now, in the context of how we're talking right now, we're talking about generalities. So spirit to me is specifically just any people on the other side. But when I'm having a session one on one with a client, I will say, your sister says this, your dad says this, your mom says this. So I'll refer to them in the role that they had with you here in the physical world, even though once they cross over and they're in the spirit realm, there's no roles. We
Yes.
define them and give them a role, but in
Mhm,
general,
mhm.
to me, I believe in reincarnation and, there's churn with that. So whereas we might be, brother and sister in one life, we might be, husband and wife. Ew, I know it sounds weird, but to
Right.
me, I feel like we can change roles in our lifetimes. And so, for me, when I refer to spirit, it's more in a generality of someone who's been here in the physical plane and they're on the other side, kind of waiting for their next round, so to speak, to come back and live a physical life again.
Okay, that's really nicely said. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Sorry, my dog is distracting me. I don't know. All of a sudden, she's wanting to interrupt during these sessions, and I'm wondering if she's feeling things, quite frankly.
Well, yeah. The thing is that you're talking and you're inviting in spiritual energy and she's
Yes.
sensing that. And so I feel like that's probably what that has to do with. So
She needs to settle
so
down.
yeah. No, spirits just around. Your dog is sassy and I'm trying not to channel for you because I know this is an interview, but I'm like I'm getting information. So if at some point stuff pops out, I might throw some things out.
Oh,
So
throw
forgive
some
me.
things out because a lot of people have not had readings. I mean, I've had them since the 80s, but some people have not experienced things. So do not hold back. We have
Okay.
no problem with
All
that.
right. I won't
And I
keep
got to
going
tell
with
you,
questions, but I have a feeling at some point something's going to pop out.
yeah, because my husband always shows up when I'm doing this. Um,
Hmm.
so-
And that's probably why. I have to say, all right, here we go. So I have to ask first of all, so you already divulged your husband's on the other side, so I can't claim that there's a husband energy because you divulged that information. But would we understand with him where the CR name comes in? So either Charles, Carl, like, but where does that name come
Well,
in?
his name is Carl.
Perfect. Okay. Because I just kept seeing so it's weird when spirit comes through and they show me their name, I'll see it like Wheel of Fortune, where I'll see like a couple letters with like some blanks in between. And I just kind of go with like, where's the CR
Uh-huh.
name or where's the AN name? And so, yeah. And then he also talks about the up and down with the health issues as far as the roller coaster ride. This wasn't like a car accident or something like that, where it was a sudden, unexpected thing. This was something where this was a long battle with lots of health issues because this wasn't just like one health issue. This was several things. It was layered,
Mhm.
is what he says.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
spot on with that. You
Yeah.
are.
The
Mhm.
other thing with him is that he talks about, now I don't know if you're in your personal life you're very introverted, because he talks about this, meaning like in this capacity, something about it where you're stepping outside of your shell, or you're coming very much outside of your comfort zone.
I think it's more with the techie things that come along with all of this,
Fair
because
enough.
I enjoy the interviewing, I enjoy meeting people, and I'm not an introvert.
Yeah, no, that's fair. He just talks about you're coming outside of your comfort zone
Yep.
to do some bigger things. But I have to ask, because even before, and and he takes me to, has he only been gone like a short amount of time, like less than 18 months or even less than like a year? Like I feel like it's a very short amount of time.
No, it'll be 4 years in a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's something with like either the last year to year and a half he's talking about in reference. And so I don't know if maybe in the last year and a half you've been able to kind of come out of your grieving and kind of embrace spirituality, but there's something with like 18 months that he draws me to. And so I don't know what that means.
Well, I know this is the first time in 4 years that I started to feel joy, and I started to feel more like myself.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's hard because but I have to ask though, like, was he either your second marriage or your second life? Because I'm going to say this, is he shows me my sign for like living a double life, which means like, maybe we had kids with someone else or something like that, but then he was kind of, because I'm going to say it like he's saying it, is he's
Mhm.
saying I was the one. Not to say you didn't have other loves in your life, but he was like, no, 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 I was the one. So,
Oh,
he's
wow.
just he's
Mhm.
just claiming that, when I say claiming, I mean nicely claiming this. This isn't, there's no arrogance or ego behind this at all, but
Mhm.
that, you did right with him, and that he
Yeah.
was the one you should have been with all along, but maybe, and, and not to say, we come here to live our lives with different purposes and different agendas and different
Yes.
lessons that we need to learn. You
Mhm.
needed to learn and have certain experiences with these other gentlemen in your
Yeah.
prior life, but he was the one that
Yes.
we needed to always be with. And he talks about saying sorry that he had to cut that short.
Yeah. I got mad at him for leaving. He was supposed to
Well,
live
he
till I
knows,
was
and that's
90.
why he's bringing forward apologies, is because he knows you were mad. And I realize you're not still mad at him, my dear. But the thing is that he recognizes that at the end of the day, he
Mhm.
says it's all about quality versus quantity.
I know.
And you
I
would
just
have
wanted
rather
him to
had
go.
5 or 10 years with that one person that you were meant to be with. Because, quite honestly, Karen, there's people that are married 50 years that don't have the amount of love or the amount of adoration that you and Carl had. Does that make sense? Because
Oh
that's
my
what he's
God.
saying,
Yes.
is he's
Yes.
like, because he's admitting like you weren't his first wife either. He had other relationships
Yep.
prior to
Mhm.
you, and he
Mhm.
was like they were all watered down. You know how, like, because this is a funny comparison, but this is what he's telling me, so I just go with what spirit shows me. You know how, like, when growing up you made Kool-Aid and you added too much water and you're like, it's Kool-Aid, but it's not
Mhm.
great, right? You're just drinking it at that point because it's Kool-Aid.
Mhm.
He's like, this was perfect. This was the
It was.
perfect match, the perfect flavor. Like she was my flavor and I was her flavor. And even if you only get to have it for a brief amount of time, at the end of the day, he says, I would have rather had 5 or 10 years with her than having 50 years with something that was watered down.
Yeah. We had a love that was incredible. And I
Hmm.
never believed in soulmates at all until I met him. I
Hmm.
didn't. I just thought it was, oh, whatever, whatever. Yeah. He was
He
pretty
literally
incredible.
just kind of did this move where he was like, I know. Like, you know
Oh,
but the
God.
thing is
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, because I feel that he believed the same thing you did. I don't think he believed in soulmates either, and then both of you, when you met, were kind of like, oh crap.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
I was sick of men by the time I met him, and he
Hmm.
was in a bad relation. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the beautiful thing though, is, if you take it, I realize this is an interview and not a reading, but when spirit comes through, I can't ignore them. Like, I just roll with it, and for
And he
him.
won't leave you alone if you don't say something. So,
Oh, yeah. Oh, my dear. I'm so used to spirit. Like, they don't leave you alone at all if
at
you
all.
don't acknowledge them.
Yeah.
And, I think if you take anything away from this, it's that you would much rather have 10 years, 8 years, 13 years, whatever it is, you'd much rather have that small amount of time of something that is that enriching and that
Beautiful.
loving and that beautiful than to
Mhm.
say, I had 15 years or I had 50 years of eh, you know? So,
Yeah, I don't want that.
nope,
Oh
nobody
my
does.
God. Well, thank you for allowing him to speak to me. I do appreciate that.
Listen, I don't think he was going to let me not say anything, but but you're absolutely welcome, my dear.
But I think this is a nice flavor because people can see what it's like because we don't know each other. We
Yeah.
don't, you
Mm-mm.
know? Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
And,
didn't even
and
know that you knew JJ. So there you go.
yeah, yeah, see? And I know that I've had a friend that saw a charlatan, and I cannot convince him to go to another psychic.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to. I keep working on it.
And that's what it's unfortunate because there are people out there where they somehow make money being able to say, there's a female here and she loves you and she's proud of you. And people will go, yes, yes, I know exactly who that. Oh my God, I'm so glad she came through. And they haven't received any validation. They haven't received any factual information. And part of me is it somebody who is so desperate to hear from somebody that they're just going to accept anything? But then also, what part does that charlatan play where, they're trying to take advantage of someone in a vulnerable place where they can throw out a couple of very weak,
Yeah.
non-evidence based things? I mean, anyone, your neighbor could say, oh, there's a male here and he loves you. Anybody could say that,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
it's unfortunate because those are the people that make people like myself who work
Yes.
really hard to be genuine and to have a healing based focus. They make us look terrible, and so it's unfortunate. But I always tell people at the end of the day, I can't make people believe in what I do. I'm certainly not here to force people into a session, and I hope that people do go into having a psychic session with some level of discernment where they can
Hmm.
go, okay, I mean, I believe in healthy skepticism myself. Even mediums need mediums. And the few psychics that I've met with, I've been very blessed that I met with people who were legitimate, where they had an amazing gift. I was beyond impressed with the session and it wasn't watered down or anything like that. But with that said, I also did my research, and I think that's a big thing is people maybe don't spend the time to do the research and take the time to figure out what exactly they're looking for and read reviews and all of that. But yeah,
Right.
unfortunately there are charlatans out there.
Well, and I want to point out to the audience that she did verify. Chelsea verified she was getting his name, got the C and the R, and then the health issues, and I was able to validate, yeah, that what was going on. So
Mhm.
she's not just guessing; she's getting messages from.
I'm not a good guesser.
Yes, sir. Um, how, when you are reading, how do you differentiate between your own thoughts and the messages that you receive?
So that's a great question, actually. So when I go into a session, and it's funny because there are people who know me outside of mediumship, meaning
Right.
I might have a friend who's like, hey, I want to do a group reading with my family, to where the friend might know me, but the family I've never met. They don't know me at all. To
Yes.
where then when my friend will see me go into a session and they'll see me start the channeling process, I've gotten feedback dozens of times where they're like, it's really weird. I've known you for many years, and seeing you channel, your personality completely shifts. You completely
Mm,
change. And so for me, when I'm doing my meditation as part of my spiel that I do, my mantra, I specifically tell spirit, please clear all of my personal thoughts, feelings, and emotions so that I can give the best reading possible to my client. So I specifically ask spirit, wipe my brain, wipe my thoughts, clear me of any type of ego or information that I might be receiving, or
awesome.
something from my personal life that could tamper with this. And an example is, so A few years ago when my dad was passing away from cancer, I was struggling with reading people who had a dad that passed because it was so
Oh,
fresh to me. The diagnosis as far as reading someone that had cancer, that wasn't a problem. But when I would have, the first few weeks after, because I only took 2 weeks off from clients after my
oh
dad
wow.
passed because I'm of the belief system that when I'm raising my vibration and I'm sitting in that happy, amazing love space where spirit lies, that's where healing really takes place. And so even though I'm sitting here channeling for someone else and I'm giving them healing, me just sitting in that realm of healing, it was healing me. And so I purposely didn't take a lot of time off, and it did help. It was tremendously helpful to just sit in that love space and just receive that energy. Even though I was giving it to other people, I was still receiving it at the same time.
I have not heard it put that way, and that is perfect. That
Mm-hmm.
is so eye-opening. That is
Yeah,
perfect.
because it's a realm, right? It's a space. And so
Mhm.
when you're sitting in there, even though I'm not working for me, I wasn't going into a session going, how can I benefit from
Mhm.
this? It was, how can I, deliver the information without any bias to my clients? And so it was a struggle the first couple weeks, but I remember in a specific meditation that I did that was for me, not prior to a session. It was just a meditation that
Mhm.
I was in.
Mhm.
I remember asking Spirit, I need you to really help me work through this. I can't channel people who've lost a dad. And they were like, you need to channel because of the fact that you lost a dad.
Oh,
That's the only thing that's going to help you heal through this. And for me, I feel like I was able to work through and process my dad's passing so much more quickly because of the fact that I was just sitting in that awesome love space. And even though, again, I'm sitting here relaying messages to my clients, I was also receiving at the same time on more of maybe a subconscious level, if that makes
maybe
sense.
that's why I cry so much when I try to connect with spirit, because I just feel overwhelming love when I
Hmm.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've mentioned channeling. We haven't mentioned that. Can you give a little background or an explanation of what you mean?
So for me, channeling, because I think that that word is subjective based on each person.
Hmm.
I look at it from my point of view. Channeling is allowing spirit to come through and convey information without me trying to change it or alter it in any way. I'm essentially letting spirit take the wheel. So, when people say that phrase like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel, I'm like, I let spirit take the wheel every night. I do it 5 nights a week, right?
Hmm.
So for me, that's what channeling is channeling for me is the total surrender of ego, the total surrender of my consciousness
Oh.
and letting spirit take over. That is what channeling means to me personally.
Hmm. I like your
So,
take on things. I really do.
hey,
Um,
I'm not like I said, I'm not a guru. I didn't write a book or write this book. I have written a book, but I didn't write this book.
oh, you've written a book?
I
What did
did,
what
yeah.
you what did you write your book on?
So I did well, years and years ago, I had a client that I was working with, and he came to me with an idea, and he was like, this is going to sound wacky, but would you consider doing a book? Because he was a journalist. He
Mhm.
lives in Florida, and he owns several journalism magazines that are like vacation based for Florida. And so he has his background in journalism, his education is in that. And he was like, if I do the research and I conduct the interviews, would you consider doing interviews of deceased celebrities or famous figures? And I was like, well, what do you have in mind? And so we wrote a book called Seven Great Souls, and we basically channeled celebrities or famous figures that were departed on the other side. And it was my first time doing actively doing trance mediumship, which is where I'm not I'm even more surrendered, meaning that I completely give up all of my consciousness to spirit. Because even when I have a client sitting here, to an extent, I've released my personal thoughts, feelings, and emotions, but I haven't released all consciousness to spirit.
Mhm.
So in the moment, like I realize I'm sitting with the client, like I'm there, but I'm not there. Trance channeling is where you are completely Chelsea is lights out. I've left the building, right? And so it was interesting because every time we would do these interviews and he would ask me these, I wouldn't remember anything. I'd have like an hour and a half of my life that just disappeared. I couldn't recall any of it until I went back. And so there was several, we channeled Marilyn Monroe, JFK, Lincoln, um, Amelia Earhart. Who was another one? Winston Churchill. But there, Martin Luther King was another one. So it was several people who'd passed on. And what was interesting was I had a
Mm-hmm.
client about 2 years after the book was published, because the book was published in 2019. About 2 years after it was published, I met with this client and she was like, I actually found you because of your book. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, and the only reason I came to you was because there was a portion of the book where you interviewed Lincoln and you talked about how Lincoln, when after slavery was abolished, it was really hard for these slaves to then all of a sudden, yes, they have freedom, but they don't know how to get a job. They don't have any opportunity per se.
Right.
And Lincoln had actually created kind of these, I don't know how to describe it, but more or less like where people could work and have free living. So there would be like an apartment complex, and maybe they would do some cleaning or they would do maintenance or they would help do things around the property itself so that
Mm-hmm.
they could kind of earn their keep, so to speak. But that wasn't really well discussed in history books. And she's like, I'm a direct descendant of Lincoln and I'm in the process of
Yeah.
writing a book about him. And she's like, there's no way you could have known that. It's not in history books. And so
So
that was
I'm
how she found me. It was really wild.
very,
So
very happenstance. No coincidences. I'm hoping that you will come on another time and talk about your book
I would love to. Yeah.
and share your book. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I gotta wrap this up. I don't want to. I am enjoying talking to you. This has gone longer than any of my other sessions. Do you have any?
Hopefully that's a good thing.
No, that's a great thing, and I can feel your energy, and I love your energy. So
Oh,
just
thank
know
you.
that. Okay, what can I share? Well, you've told a lot of memorable things. Do you have certain symbols or signs that mean something? I know a psychic that a bunny means a certain thing. I don't know if you have
Yes,
like that.
absolutely. Yeah. So I have, oddly enough, I kind of learned to channel. Like, so, when I listen to Joshua John, when he tells me about his, he worked through so much mentorship and getting certified through Lisa Williams and all these
Right.
other experiences. And then
Hmm.
there's me where I started watching Long Island Medium and I was like, I can do that. And I literally taught myself how to channel watching her show, because I
Really?
would watch it and then I would pause it and I would sit there with notes and I go, okay, there's a male that's going to come through and he's going to talk about this and this is how he passed. And then I would hit play and I would see how much I got right.
Awesome.
And so that was how I kind of like grew with my gift, was I tested myself. So I jokingly say I'm a grassroots medium because I didn't go through training. Like, I just kind of taught myself how to do this, but I give credit to Long Island Medium, because that was really kind of what helped develop my gift. But with
Mhm.
that said, to your question, I do have very repetitive symbols. So for me, yellow roses means a birthday or anniversary, and it means it either just passed within 2 weeks or is coming up within 2 weeks.
Mhm.
For me, when I see spirit, like where they tap a watch, it means that they passed before their time. Either they were
Oh,
young, or maybe that they were given a certain amount of time, like maybe they were given a year to live and they only made it 6 months. And so that means they were robbed of time. So when they tap the watch. So
wow.
I have several signs and symbols that over the year I've kind of accumulated, where they'll repeat over and over in a session, that I'll see. So I've kind of just kind of, when you learn the symbol, it, to me, it just kind of solidifies it. Now there are some symbols where I've gotten them for years, but I couldn't figure out what it meant. And then later on, it would finally click with someone, and then I was able to memorize it. So, like, an example for me is, so I have, the yellow roses, I have the watch. But for years, I would have this one sign that would come through, but it wouldn't come through very often. So it was really hard to get the validation, because I'd get it maybe once a year or maybe every other year. And I'd see this symbol of horses, like ponies, running through a big field, and it'd be a big cluster, like 10 of these horses. And
Mhm.
so I'd ask people, like, do you horseback ride? Do you do horse betting? Did you have a farm? Like, I'm trying to say, like, what do horses
What
mean?
is
And
it?
they would always go, no, no, I don't know what horses mean. And probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I had this one client. I'd already established her dad's passing, how he passed. And so we already were kind of on that bandwagon. And I saw this symbol again with the horses. And in my head, I'm like, huh, not again.
Not again.
Because it's exhausting to see this sign that you just can't figure out what it means. And so I asked her, I was like, I'm just going out on a limb here. I go, what's with the horses? And I said, because I'm seeing a field full of horses. And I'd already established her dad had died in a car accident. But aside from that, I didn't know any other details. And I said, I'm seeing this field of horses. And I said, so I don't know if you guys have a connection to farming with horse racing. Like, what's the connection? And she goes, oh, my dad died in a Mustang and he was
Oh,
a big sports car collector,
oh,
horsepower. So that was how I figured
oh.
out. So now when I see a bunch of horses, that I know that connects to horsepower or the person was big into cars. And that's my weird symbol for that.
Took a while to
And
get
it
there.
took me probably 10 years to figure out that symbol. It was exhausting. So I'm glad I finally got it. But most of the time, when spirit has a symbol, it'll come through and then I can kind of memorize it because it'll come up a little bit later, maybe 3-4 months down the road. But that horsepower one, it only comes up. It comes up very infrequently for me. And so that's where it took me so long to learn it. But
Yeah.
so I do absolutely have repetitive symbols that have meaning to me. And some of them are very literal and some of them are very symbolic. Horses could mean a lot of things, but for me, a field of horses running apparently means horsepower.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Mhm.
Chelsea, it has been a delight. It really has.
It's been great. Thank
Wonderful
you for
connecting
hosting
with you.
me.
Okay, so I want to thank you for coming on. I'm going to
Absolutely.
quit recording, but don't leave yet, okay?
Okay. I won't go
Okay,
anywhere.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Bye
having
bye.
me. Bye.